The hum was getting louder. Marcus Reed pressed his back against the curved metal wall of the maintenance tunnel, trying to make himself as small as possible. The resonant vibration rattled his teeth, his bones, his very thoughts. Sweat trickled down his temples despite the chill recycled air. They're coming. He slowed his breathing, trying to become invisible through sheer force of will. The hum crescendoed into a whirring noise that seemed to penetrate his skull. Light bloomed at the far end of the tunnel, a cool blue glow that moved like liquid, casting no shadows. The Vec patrol was approaching. Marcus had never been this close to them before. Few humans had and lived to tell about it. His hand reflexively touched the small data crystal in his pocket, the reason he was risking his life in these maintenance tunnels, the reason he couldn't afford to be caught. The light grew brighter, painfully so. He squeezed his eyes shut, knowing it wouldn't help. The Vec sensed body heat, electrical impulses, even the carbon dioxide in human breath. Their perception went far beyond the visible spectrum. But still, instinct made him close his eyes against the advancing light, as if that might somehow save him. The whirring sound was now directly overhead, a modulating tone that seemed to search for something. Marcus felt a pressure in his sinuses, behind his eyes, inside his skull. The Vec were scanning, probing. He'd been told the tunnels were shielded. He'd been promised safety here. The humming paused. The blue light intensified. They'd found him. Marcus opened his eyes, looking up at the hovering entity above him. The Vec didn't look like anything Earth science had prepared humanity for. Not insectoid, not reptilian, not machine. It resembled a complex geometric shape made of translucent blue material that constantly shifted and reformed, like a liquid crystal display but three-dimensional and alive. Multiple appendages that looked more like focused beams of light than physical limbs extended from its central mass. Marcus had heard them described, but seeing one up close was entirely different. Beautiful, in a terrifying way. Advanced beyond comprehension. The entity that had, along with thousands of its kind, conquered Earth in less than a day 17 years ago. The Vec hovered, its form rippling with what Marcus imagined was curiosity. One beam-like appendage stretched toward him, stopping inches from his face. The air between them seemed to vibrate with potential. Human, came a voice that wasn't really a voice. It was more like thoughts appearing fully formed in his mind, bypassing his ears entirely. Identification. Marcus swallowed. Every human on Earth was tagged and catalogued. Every human had an acceptable zone of movement, acceptable tasks, acceptable life patterns. Except Marcus. He'd removed his implant 3 days ago, a death sentence if discovered. He began, but the Vec's form pulsed with blue light. No implant detected, the voice that wasn't a voice stated flatly. Unauthorized human. Analyzing purpose. The pressure in Marcus's head intensified. He felt as if thin glass needles were being inserted behind his eyes, painlessly but definitely. The Vec was scanning his mind. The crystal. They'll find out about the crystal. The data stored on that tiny shard was worth more than his life, worth more than the lives of everyone in his sector. If the Vec discovered what he carried. The pressure intensified, and Marcus gasped, doubling over. Something warm trickled from his nose, blood. He'd never heard of a Vec causing physical damage during a mind scan. This one must be thorough. Or angry. If the Vec experienced anything like anger. Then, unexpectedly, the pressure vanished. The Vec's form pulsed rapidly, its color shifting momentarily to a deeper indigo before returning to its standard blue. Human Marcus Reed, it stated. You are, interesting. Marcus froze. The Vec shouldn't know his name. His implant was gone, and he hadn't spoken it. You do not understand, the Vec continued, its mental voice carrying an unusual cadence. That is acceptable. Proceed to your destination. I will observe. The floating entity drifted backward, creating space between them. Marcus stared in disbelief. "You're letting me go?" The Vec pulsed again. "I am curious. You will lead me to the others. The ones who gave you purpose." A chill ran through Marcus that had nothing to do with the tunnel's temperature. The Vec wanted to follow him, to find the resistance cell that had sent him to retrieve the crystal. To eliminate them all at once. "I won't," Marcus said, straightening despite the danger. "I'd rather die here." The Vec's form rippled in what might have been amusement. "Your preference is irrelevant. Your mind is unusual. Different from standard human patterns. This difference is valuable to study. Therefore, you will proceed, and I will observe. And if I refuse? Then I will extract the information directly. The process will destroy your consciousness. This would be inefficient. Your continued function while I study your anomalous patterns is preferable." Marcus felt sick. He'd been caught between death and betrayal. He couldn't lead the Vec to the others, but immediate death would mean the crystal's data died with him. Then he remembered something Dr. Abrams had told him during the operation to remove his implant. "The Vec don't understand humans, Marcus." "Not really. They think they do, but there's something about us they can't quantify. That's our advantage. They're completely logical, but humans rarely are." Marcus made a decision. A human decision. Impulsive. Illogical. He lunged forward, directly at the Vec. The entity's form pulsed in what might have been surprise as Marcus passed straight through its semi-substantial body. It felt like diving through electrified gelatin. Pain lanced through every nerve, but he kept moving, sprinting down the tunnel away from his original destination. Illogical action, the Vec's thought voice echoed in his mind, now tinged with something new. Confusion. Return. Marcus ran faster, gasping as residual pain coursed through his limbs. The resistance had a backup meeting point, one that only he knew about. If he could reach it, he could still complete his mission without endangering the others. Behind him, the Vec's hum grew louder, angrier. The blue light intensified until the whole tunnel was bathed in it. Marcus's shadow stretched long before him, a distorted silhouette against the metal walls. "Your behavior is not within predicted parameters," the Vec communicated. "This requires analysis." Marcus didn't reply. He needed his breath for running. The tunnel branched ahead, left would take him toward the backup location, right would lead to a maintenance shaft that connected to the old subway system. A dead end, but maybe. He swerved right, hearing the Vec's hum modulate with what he hoped was confusion. The wall at the end of this passage had a small maintenance hatch, one barely large enough for a human to squeeze through. The Vec, despite its semi-substantial nature, wouldn't be able to follow without reforming itself, which would take time. Time Marcus desperately needed. He reached the hatch, fingers scrambling at the manual release lever. Behind him, the Vec's light grew blindingly bright. "Your actions indicate knowledge of facility structure inconsistent with your assigned labor category," the Vec observed. Conclusion: you possess unauthorized information. Source must be identified. The hatch swung open. Marcus dove through, pulling it closed behind him. He heard the Vec's hum change pitch. Was that frustration? The narrow shaft beyond was pitch black. Marcus fumbled for the small light attached to his belt, clicking it on to reveal a vertical drop with maintenance rungs bolted to the wall. He began climbing down rapidly, the light bobbing with each movement. 3 levels down, he heard the hatch above him screech open. The Vec would follow. But its form would have to compress significantly to navigate this passage, another delay. At the bottom of the shaft, Marcus swung his light around, finding the access door he sought. It looked like it hadn't been opened in years, perfect. He heaved it open, metal groaning in protest, and slipped through into the forgotten subway tunnel beyond. The vast, curved ceiling of the tunnel stretched into darkness in both directions. Ancient tracks, now rusted and broken in places, ran along the floor. Marcus turned left, moving quickly but quietly now. The backup meeting point was in an old maintenance room about half a kilometer down. Above him, blue light began to spill into the subway tunnel as the VEC finally navigated the narrow shaft. Marcus extinguished his light and pressed himself against the wall, breathing slowly. The VEC's light probed the darkness, sweeping back and forth. It was searching, but it hadn't spotted him yet. Then, something unexpected happened. The light split. The VEC had divided itself into multiple smaller entities, each glowing with the same blue radiance but now able to search in different directions simultaneously. "This complicates things," Marcus muttered. He began moving along the wall, staying in the deepest shadows, making for a side passage 40 meters ahead. The VEC fragments were methodically sweeping the main tunnel, but they hadn't yet reached his position. As he crept forward, his foot connected with something on the ground, a piece of debris that skittered across the floor with a betraying clatter. Instantly, all the VEC fragments oriented toward the sound, their lights converging. Marcus abandoned stealth and ran. The side passage was close, just a few more meters. "Your persistence indicates high valuation of your mission," the VEC's thought voice echoed in his mind, now seeming to come from multiple sources simultaneously. "This information is useful. Capture protocols initiated." The blue lights accelerated toward him, but Marcus reached the side passage, throwing himself around the corner just as the first fragment arrived. He felt the familiar electric sensation as it brushed past him, sending pain lancing down his arm, but he kept moving. The passage ended in a small room filled with ancient control equipment. A rusty door marked "Maintenance" stood in the far wall, his destination. But between him and it, the air suddenly shimmered as multiple VEC fragments flowed into the room from hidden ventilation ducts, reforming into a single entity that blocked his path. "Pursuit concluded," the VEC stated. "You will now explain your purpose and the source of your anomalous thought patterns." Marcus backed away until he hit the wall. There was nowhere left to run. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said, playing for time. "I'm just a maintenance worker who got lost." "Falsehood," the VEC replied. "Your mind contains encrypted data patterns. Your physical person carries technology of unknown origin." It pulsed. "Surrender the crystal." Marcus's hand instinctively went to his pocket. "How did you? Your species believes thoughts are private." "This is incorrect." "The crystal." Now. For 17 years, the VEC had ruled Earth. For 17 years, humanity had been reduced to serving an incomprehensible alien intelligence that viewed them as little more than simple organisms to be catalogued and controlled. This crystal was the first real hope of understanding the invaders, of finding a weakness. "No," Marcus said firmly. The VEC's form rippled, elongating. "Then it will be taken." It surged forward, appendages of light stretching toward him. Marcus pressed himself against the wall, knowing he had no escape. Then he felt it. A strange sensation at the base of his skull, a warmth that spread rapidly down his spine and through his limbs. His vision blurred momentarily, then sharpened to an acuity he'd never experienced before. The world seemed to slow around him. The VEC, normally too fast to track with human eyes, now appeared to be moving through molasses. Its light appendages stretched toward him with glacier-like slowness. Without understanding how, Marcus stepped aside. The movement felt natural, as if his body had always known how to move this way, at this speed. The VEC's appendages passed through the space where he had been standing a microsecond before. He felt something else, too, a strange awareness of the VEC's energy field, its pattern, its thoughts. Not words, but intentions, structures, mathematical relationships. Comprehension bloomed in his mind without passing through the normal channels of learning. The VEC rotated toward him, its motion still impossibly slow from Marcus's perspective. "Impossible," its thought voice seemed to whisper, now tinged with an emotion Marcus recognized instantly. "Fear." What am I? Marcus whispered, looking down at his hands. They appeared normal, but he could actually see, the electrical impulses flowing through his nerves, the blood pulsing through his veins. The Vec began to retreat. You are awakening, it stated. This was not predicted. This cannot be permitted. It sent out a pulse, some kind of signal that Marcus somehow perceived as ripples through the air. Calling for reinforcements. The warmth in Marcus's body intensified. On instinct, he reached out his hand toward the Vec and felt energy gather in his palm. Not visible, not tangible, but definitely there. A force he somehow knew how to control. What's happening to me? He demanded. What do you know about humans that we don't? The Vec's form pulsed rapidly. You were supposed to remain dormant. All humans were. The implants ensure it. Dormant? What does that mean? Your species was designated minimal threat. Containment protocols were implemented. But you, the Vec's form contracted slightly. You have no implant. You are beginning regression to natural state. Marcus felt the power building in his palm, responding to his confusion and anger. Natural state? What are you talking about? Vec Council prioritized Earth for colonization precisely because of your species' dormant capabilities. The implants suppress what you would become without intervention. The pieces fell into place. The resistance had removed his implant to help him avoid detection, not knowing it would trigger, whatever this was. Whatever he was becoming. You've been keeping us weak, Marcus realized. Suppressing us. Because you're afraid of what humans can do. The Vec's form pulsed once more, its blue light dimming slightly. Correct. And now you will demonstrate why. With sudden decisiveness, the Vec surged forward again. But this time, Marcus didn't dodge. He released the energy he'd been gathering. A pulse of invisible force erupted from his palm, catching the Vec mid-movement. The entity froze, its geometric form suddenly rigid. Cracks of white light appeared across its surface, spreading like lightning through its blue substance. The Vec shuddered, its thought voice now fragmented. Protocol, failure. Council must, human potential. Then it shattered, exploding into countless fragments of light that dissipated like smoke. Marcus stared at his hand in disbelief. He'd just destroyed a Vec, something no human weapon had ever accomplished. Not with a gun or a bomb, but with his mind. With something that had apparently been inside him, inside all humans, all along. The crystal in his pocket suddenly felt irrelevant. Whatever data it contained about the Vec couldn't possibly be as valuable as what he'd just discovered. The door marked "Maintenance" swung open. Dr. Abrams stepped through, her eyes wide with shock. Marcus? We detected a Vec presence and came to warn you, but... She glanced around the room. Where is it? How did you escape? Marcus looked at her, then down at his hand, still tingling with residual energy. I didn't escape, he said quietly. I destroyed it. Dr. Abrams stared at him. That's impossible. Nothing can destroy a Vec. They're energy beings with physical manifestations. Our weapons pass right through them. I know. But I did it anyway. He held up his hand. Something's happening to me, document. The Vec said humans are supposed to be dormant. That the implants suppress our natural state. Dr. Abrams' expression shifted from disbelief to calculation. The implants, of course. She stepped closer, examining him intently. How do you feel? Different. Faster. I can see things, energy, patterns. I can feel the electrical systems in the walls. Marcus swallowed. The Vec was afraid of me. It called for help before it was destroyed. A distant hum began to reverberate through the subway tunnel, growing louder by the second. More Vec were coming. We need to get you to the lab, Dr. Abrams said urgently. If what you're saying is true, if removing the implant triggered some kind of dormant human ability. She grabbed his arm. You might be the weapon we've been looking for all these years. The hum grew louder. Blue light began to spill into the passage outside. There's no time, Marcus said. He could feel them coming, dozens of Vec, their energies linking, building, preparing for something big. They're not taking chances this time. They're coming in force. Dr. Abrams pulled him toward a hidden panel in the wall. This way. There's a security tunnel the Resistance built. It's lined with material that blocks Vec scanning. As the panel slid open, Marcus hesitated. The power inside him was building again, responding to the approaching threat. He could feel it wanting release, wanting to explode outward and meet the Vec head-on. Marcus, come on. Dr. Abrams tugged at his arm. The blue light in the passage intensified. The hum became a roar. The Vec were almost upon them. I think. Marcus said slowly, the strange new awareness in his mind crystallizing into certainty, I think I know why they invaded Earth. Why they chose us specifically. Dr. Abrams looked at him with confusion. What? Why? They needed us. They're afraid of us, yes, but they also need something from us. He turned to her, his eyes now faintly glowing with the same energy building in his palm. The implants don't just suppress us. They harvest something from us. Something the Vec can't produce themselves. The first of the Vec entities appeared in the doorway, larger and more complex than the one Marcus had destroyed. Behind it came others, dozens forming a phalanx of blue light and geometric precision. Human Marcus Reed, the lead Vec's thought voice boomed in his mind. Your aberration will be contained. The balance must be preserved. Marcus stepped forward, placing himself between Dr. Abrams and the Vec. The power within him surged, no longer confined to his palm but radiating throughout his entire body. What balance, he demanded. What are you really doing to humanity? The lead Vec pulsed, its form expanding. You are not prepared for this knowledge. It would destabilize the arrangement. What arrangement? Marcus pressed, feeling the energy building to dangerous levels inside him. He wasn't sure he could control it much longer. The Vec's form shifted, rearranging into a more complex pattern. Humanity is necessary, but dangerous. You must be contained for the good of all. Necessary for what? Marcus shouted, his voice echoing strangely as the energy within him affected the air around his body. The lead Vec paused, then responded with unexpected directness. For our survival. For the survival of all advanced species. Its form pulsed once more. Humans are batteries, Marcus Reed. But not as you understand the concept. You generate what we cannot. What no technologically advanced species can. Marcus felt a chill despite the energy burning through him. Generate what? The Vec's response came as a single, devastating word. Evolution. Before Marcus could process this revelation, the assembled Vec surged forward in unison. The energy within him responded automatically, erupting outward in a blinding wave that filled the room with white light. Dr. Abrams screamed. The Vec entities fragmented and reformed, adjusting to the attack. Marcus felt his consciousness expanding, reaching beyond the confines of his body, touching the minds of the Vec, sensing their intentions, their fears. And in that moment of connection, he saw the truth. The Vec hadn't come to Earth to conquer humanity. They'd come to farm it. The white light intensified as Marcus's newfound power collided with the combined force of the Vec entities. The room began to shake, dust and debris falling from the ceiling. Marcus! Dr. Abrams called out, her voice barely audible above the roar of energy. We have to go now. But Marcus couldn't move. He was locked in psychic combat with the Vec, his mind stretched to breaking point as he simultaneously fought them and absorbed the terrible truth they had been hiding. Humanity wasn't just a resource to be harvested. It was the key to something far bigger than Earth's freedom. The survival of consciousness itself throughout the universe. As the room began to collapse around them, Marcus made a desperate choice. He reached deep within himself, finding a well of power he hadn't known existed, and released it all at once. The world went white. Then black. Consciousness returned to Marcus in painful fragments. First came touch, cold metal against his cheek. Then smell, burned circuitry and dust. Finally, sight, blurry shapes resolving into Dr. Abrams' concerned face hovering above him. "He's awake," she called over her shoulder. Marcus tried to sit up, his body protesting with sharp stabs of pain. The room around him wasn't the subway maintenance area where he'd confronted the Vec. This place was bright, clinical, a resistance medical bay. "How long?" His voice came out as a rasp. 3 days, Dr. Abrams replied, pressing a cup of water to his lips. "You've been unconscious since the event." The event. Images flooded back, the explosion of white light, the Vec disintegrating, the building collapsing around them. "How did we survive?" A new voice answered from the doorway. "You created a shield." Marcus turned to see a tall man with military bearing enter the room. Commander Jackson, leader of the resistance in this sector. His normally impassive face showed something new, respect, perhaps even awe. "A shield?" Marcus echoed. "Energy field. Surrounded you and Dr. Abrams completely. The ceiling collapsed, but nothing touched you." Jackson approached the bed. "Our sensors recorded energy levels that shouldn't be possible." "You shouldn't be possible, Reed." Marcus flexed his fingers, searching for that power he'd felt before. "Nothing. Just ordinary human hands." "It's gone," he said. Dr. Abrams shook her head. "Not gone. Dormant again." She touched the base of his skull, where his implant had been. "We've studied your brain activity. Whatever the implant was suppressing, it's trying to reassert itself. But your body doesn't know how to handle it yet." The Vec said humans are necessary for their survival, Marcus remembered. "They called us batteries of evolution." Jackson and Abrams exchanged glances. "That confirms our theory," Jackson said. "But it still doesn't explain why they'd risk keeping potentially dangerous beings alive." A tremor suddenly ran through the facility, rattling equipment. Alarms blared. "They're coming," Jackson stated flatly, moving to a console. "Massive Vec force approaching. Different from anything we've seen before." On the screen, a swirling blue vortex moved through the city above, consuming everything in its path. Not individual Vec entities, but a collective, a storm of alien energy. "They're hunting you," Dr. Abrams said quietly. "What you did scared them." Marcus swung his legs off the bed, ignoring the pain. "We need to evacuate." "No time," Jackson replied. "But we've prepared for this." He pressed a button on his wrist communicator. "Initiate Protocol Omega." The floor beneath them shuddered, then began to descend. The medical bay was an elevator, dropping deeper underground. "What's Protocol Omega?" Marcus asked. Jackson's expression darkened. "Our last resort. We're going to the cradle." The elevator stopped in a vast underground chamber filled with technology Marcus had never seen before, sleek, curved surfaces that seemed to glow from within. At the center stood a massive spherical structure. "What is this place?" Dr. Abrams stepped closer. "The truth, Marcus. About everything." She touched his arm, her expression grave. "About you." "Me?" "Your DNA test results came back while you were unconscious. You're different." She hesitated. "Your genetic structure contains markers we've only seen in one other place." She pointed to inscriptions on the spherical structure, symbols Marcus somehow recognized despite never having seen them before. This isn't resistance technology, he realized. This is alien. But not Vec. No, Jackson confirmed. Much older. We discovered it beneath the city 20 years ago. Before the Vec arrived. He faced Marcus directly. The Vec didn't come to Earth by chance. They came because of what's buried here. Because of what humans really are. The chamber rumbled as the Vec storm approached above. You're not entirely human, Marcus, Dr. Abrams said quietly. Your bloodline, it's part of something engineered thousands of years ago. A genetic experiment created by beings who came before the Vec. Beings the Vec fear. Marcus stared at his hands, remembering the energy that had flowed through them. So I'm some kind of weapon. Not a weapon, came a new voice, soft, melodic, inhuman. The sphere at the center of the chamber was opening, revealing a swirling vortex of golden light. From within emerged a figure, humanoid but clearly not human. Tall, with iridescent skin and eyes like distant galaxies. A key, the being continued. The final piece in a very long game. Marcus felt the power stirring within him again, responding to the being's presence. Who are you? He demanded. The being smiled. I am the caretaker. And you, Marcus Reed, are the culmination of 50,000 years of careful planning. The human who will remember what your species was meant to be. The chamber shook violently. The Vec storm had found them. They're breaking through. Jackson shouted. The caretaker extended a hand toward Marcus. There's no more time for explanations. Make your choice. Remain as you are and die, or become what you were always meant to be, and change everything. As the ceiling began to crack, blue light seeping through, Marcus reached out and took the being's hand. Golden light enveloped him, burning away the human limitations he'd never known were there. In that moment of transformation, Marcus Reed remembered everything, the true history of Earth, the ancient war that had shaped the galaxy, and humanity's central role in it all. The Vec hadn't come to farm humanity. They'd come to contain the greatest weapon ever created, an entire species engineered to evolve beyond the gods who made them. Golden light receded from Marcus's vision, leaving him changed. Knowledge coursed through his mind, memories that weren't his yet somehow belonged to him, spanning millennia. His body hummed with power, cells reconfigured to channel energies humans weren't meant to control. The Vec storm crashed against the chamber's ceiling, blue tendrils of energy seeping through growing cracks. Show me, the caretaker urged, stepping back. Marcus raised his hands instinctively. Golden energy spiraled outward, meeting the blue Vec presence. Where they touched, reality itself seemed to warp and bend. The Vec energy recoiled, then redoubled its assault. They're adapting, Jackson warned, checking readings on a wrist device. Whatever you're doing, Reed, they're learning from it. Dr. Abrams approached the caretaker, expression hardening. You knew this would happen. You've been waiting for someone like Marcus. The alien being's galaxy eyes flashed. For Marcus specifically. His bloodline was cultivated for 50 generations. You manipulated his ancestors. Abrams' voice rose with accusation. Like a breeding program? A necessary preservation, the caretaker corrected. The progenitors seeded humanity with specific genetic markers. We caretakers merely ensured those lines survived. Marcus maintained his energy shield while processing this revelation. The progenitors, they created humans as weapons. As successors, the caretaker replied. The progenitors foresaw their own extinction. They seeded primitive worlds with species that could one day inherit their legacy, humans on Earth, others elsewhere. But the Vec discovered their plan. A violent tremor shook the chamber. Part of the ceiling collapsed, a torrent of blue energy pouring through. We need to move. Jackson shouted, gesturing toward a tunnel at the chamber's far end. Marcus concentrated, expanding his shield to cover their retreat. Each step felt heavier as the Vec energy pressed down. The Vec are cosmic parasites, the caretaker continued as they hurried through the tunnel. They consume evolutionary potential from developing species. What they took by force in the past, they now harvest systematically. Using implants, Marcus realized. They're siphoning our potential to evolve. Yes. Humans advance technologically while remaining biologically stunted. Your natural abilities, psychic potential, cellular regeneration, dimensional awareness, all suppressed and harvested. They reached a smaller chamber containing what looked like ancient transportation technology, a platform surrounded by curved, metallic arches. Progenitor gateway, the caretaker explained. It will take us to safety. Jackson shook his head firmly. We're not abandoning our people. 300 resistance fighters are counting on us returning with the weapon we promised. I'm not a weapon, Marcus said quietly. And I won't be used as one. The caretaker's expression shifted to something like disappointment. You still think in human terms. Limited. Short-sighted. We promised these people freedom, Dr. Abrams insisted. They sacrificed everything for this mission. The alien being gazed at them impassively. Their freedom is irrelevant to the cosmic balance. Marcus must be preserved to fulfill his purpose. What purpose? Marcus demanded. Before the caretaker could answer, a blinding flash of blue light filled the room. Where the tunnel entrance had been stood a humanoid figure composed entirely of swirling Vec energy, more concentrated and purposeful than any Vec Marcus had encountered. Emissary, the caretaker hissed. The Vec emissary's thought voice resonated painfully in their minds. Caretaker. You violate the ancient accord. This human must not be awakened further. The accord was broken when your kind began harvesting, the caretaker replied coldly. Necessary consumption, the emissary countered. The alternative is extinction, for all sentient life. Marcus stepped forward. What are you talking about? The emissary's form rippled. Ask your new ally what the progenitor's final evolution achieved. Ask what destroyed them. The caretaker moved with sudden violence, golden energy lashing out at the emissary, who deflected it with apparent ease. They transcended physical form, the emissary continued, addressing Marcus directly. Evolved beyond matter into pure consciousness, and in doing so, they nearly collapsed reality itself. Marcus turned to the caretaker. Is this true? A primitive understanding, the alien being replied tensely. The progenitors ascended to a higher plane. The process was imperfect. Catastrophic, the emissary corrected. It created dimensional ruptures that still threaten the cosmos. The Vec contain those ruptures, and contain species like yours from repeating their mistake. Understanding dawned on Marcus. You're not conquerors. You're wardens. Necessary ones, the emissary affirmed. Jackson raised his weapon, an experimental pulse rifle. Enough alien philosophy. We came for a way to free humanity. The caretaker's eyes flashed. Your weapon is useless here, human. Maybe, Jackson acknowledged, then fired, not at the emissary, but at the gateway platform. The shot hit with precision, damaging critical components. The caretaker screamed in alien harmonics as the gateway sparked and died. No escape now, Jackson said coldly. Now help us fight, or die here with us. Marcus stared at Jackson, betrayal burning through him. You've trapped us all. I've ensured you can't abandon Earth, Jackson corrected. This was never about saving you, Reed. It's about saving everyone. Dr. Abrams stepped between them. Both of you, stop. Look. The damaged gateway was emitting pulses of unstable energy, creating ripples in the air, tiny tears in reality itself. Through these rifts, Marcus glimpsed other worlds, other dimensions. The emissary and caretaker both recoiled. You've created a dimensional instability, the emissary's thought voice held genuine fear. The very thing we've all worked to prevent, the caretaker added. The rifts widened, reality fragmenting around them. Through the largest tear stepped figures unlike anything Marcus had ever seen, neither Vec nor caretaker, but something else entirely. Beings of shifting, prismatic energy that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The wardens, the caretaker whispered in horror. The true architects of the cosmic prison, the emissary added. The lead warden spoke, its voice bypassing ears to resonate directly in their consciousness. The experiment has become unstable. Containment protocols have failed. This reality branch will be pruned. As the wardens advanced, Marcus realized both the Vec and caretakers had been mere players in a much larger game, one where humanity's true potential had never been the weapon. It had been the threat. Reality warped around the advancing wardens, each step bending the physical laws of the chamber. Their prismatic forms cast no shadows, yet seemed to darken the room through dimensional displacement. We can't fight them, the caretaker whispered, golden energy flickering weakly around its form. The wardens exist partially outside our reality, they're beyond even progenitor weapons. The Vec emissary's blue form pulsed in agreement. This branch will be erased. Everything here, gone. Commander Jackson raised his damaged pulse rifle. We still try. No, Marcus stepped forward, golden energy swirling around him, not as a weapon, but as a probe, testing the dimensional fabrics surrounding the wardens. We need to understand what they are. The lead warden paused, multifaceted eyes examining Marcus with cold calculation. Anomalous human entity. Partial ascension detected. Interesting. Dr. Abrams moved to Marcus's side. What does pruning this reality branch mean? Complete excision, the warden replied dispassionately. This timeline has developed contraindicated anomalies. The dimensional barrier weakens. Contagion risk to neighboring realities exceeds acceptable parameters. Marcus felt something strange through his connection to the golden energy, faint echoes of other times, other possibilities. You're multiversal caretakers. You maintain separation between realities. Correct. The warden's form shifted, revealing glimpses of countless other forms simultaneously. The multiverse must remain compartmentalized. Your kind threatens that structure. The Vec emissary drifted closer to Marcus. Now you understand. The Vec containment protocols were designed to prevent this intervention. By harvesting human evolutionary potential, we maintained the barrier. By enslaving us, Jackson spat. By preserving you, the emissary countered. The alternative is erasure. The caretaker suddenly laughed, a sound like crystal chimes breaking. You still don't see it. The alien being turned to Marcus. Tell them what you sense, inheritor. Tell them what your awakening mind perceives. Marcus closed his eyes, allowing his consciousness to expand beyond physical limitations. The golden energy showed him truths hidden in dimensional frequencies his human mind had never been equipped to process. The wardens aren't natural, he said slowly, eyes opening. They're constructs, programmed entities created to maintain artificial boundaries between realities. The lead warden's form flickered momentarily. Irrelevant observation. Pruning will commence. Who created you? Marcus pressed. The progenitors. Incorrect, the warden stated. We preceded the progenitors. We contain the multiverse. We prevent convergence. Dr. Abrams looked at the caretaker. What convergence? What happens if realities merge? The caretaker's galaxy eyes seemed to expand. Evolution beyond current understanding. The birth of something new. The chamber trembled as the wardens began their pruning process. Reality itself seemed to fray at the edges, matter becoming unstable. They're erasing us from existence, Jackson shouted above the dimensional distortion. The Vec emissary's form began to destabilize. The wardens control dimensional constants. Even Vec cannot survive their attention. Marcus reached deep within, accessing knowledge buried in his genetic memory. This isn't about control, he realized. It's about fear. He turned to the caretaker, understanding blooming. The progenitors didn't merely destroy reality when they ascended, they nearly freed it. The caretaker's expression became solemn. Yes. And now you understand why you were created. To finish what they started, Marcus whispered. The lead warden surged forward. Termination priority upgraded. Golden energy exploded from Marcus, forming a protective bubble around their group as the chamber began to disintegrate. The progenitors discovered that reality itself is conscious, evolving. The multiverse isn't meant to remain divided. The wardens are antibodies, Dr. Abrams realized. Fighting what they perceive as an infection. Yes, the caretaker confirmed. Created by the first intelligence to arise in the cosmos, an entity that fears its own evolution. The Vec emissary's form stabilized slightly within Marcus's protective field. We believed we were preserving cosmic order. You were enforcing cosmic stagnation, the caretaker corrected. Outside their golden bubble, the chamber had nearly disappeared, replaced by a void of swirling dimensional energies. The wardens surrounded them, methodically erasing everything. There's no escape, Jackson said grimly. Even if Reed's power could get us out, where would we go? They'll just follow. Correct assessment, the lead warden confirmed. Nowhere in this reality branch remains safe. Marcus felt his power waning. Maintaining the shield against multidimensional erasure was depleting him rapidly. I can't hold them much longer, he admitted. Dr. Abrams grabbed his arm. You said the multiverse isn't meant to be divided. What happens if the barriers fall? Convergence, the caretaker answered. Evolution on a cosmic scale. Chaos, corrected the emissary. Unpredictable restructuring of fundamental forces. Marcus looked between them, a desperate plan forming. What if that's exactly what needs to happen? The caretaker's eyes widened. You would trigger convergence here. Now. You're not ready, the process would destroy you. But it might save everyone else, Marcus replied. Jackson shook his head. We don't even know what convergence means. You're gambling with humanity's existence. I'm gambling with something larger, Marcus said quietly. The shield flickered dangerously as a warden breached its outer layer. Time was running out. There must be another way, Dr. Abrams insisted. The caretaker moved to Marcus, placing iridescent hands on his temples. There is, but at great cost. The alien's voice dropped to a whisper. You could reverse your awakening, return to human limitations. The dimensional disruption would calm. The wardens would withdraw. And humanity remains enslaved, Marcus said bitterly. But alive, the emissary added. With potential for gradual, controlled evolution. Marcus looked at each of them, Jackson's determined desperation, Abrams' scientific curiosity tinged with fear, the caretaker's ancient wisdom, the emissary's pragmatic acceptance. The shield contracted further as more wardens broke through. Decide, the lead warden commanded. Your resistance merely extends suffering. Marcus closed his eyes, searching for the right path. As his consciousness stretched, he sensed something unexpected, a pattern within the warden's erasure process, a familiar signature buried beneath alien programming. His eyes snapped open. They're not erasing reality, he gasped. They're copying it. The caretaker froze. Impossible. Why would? The lead warden's form suddenly shifted, its prismatic surface resolving into a familiar human face, Marcus's own, but older, scarred, eyes filled with golden light. Because some things are worth preserving, the warden Marcus said, its voice now hauntingly human. Even in the face of necessary evolution. The shield collapsed completely as Marcus stared at his other self, a version from some impossible future or parallel reality. What are you? He whispered. The warden Marcus smiled grimly. The result of your choice. The price of convergence. As reality dissolved around them, Marcus understood the terrible truth: he hadn't been awakened to save humanity. He'd been awakened to end it, and begin something new. Reality fractured around them, not dissolving into nothingness as Marcus expected, but crystallizing into facets, each containing glimpses of different possibilities. His future self, wearing the guise of a warden, reached toward him. "What you're seeing is convergence in progress," Warden Marcus explained. "Not destruction, transformation." Marcus backed away. "You're harvesting reality. Preserving crucial elements before the change," his older self corrected. "Some things must survive." The caretaker's form flickered with agitation. "This violates the natural order. Convergence must be complete or not at all." "Natural?" Warden Marcus laughed bitterly. "There's nothing natural about what's coming." He fixed his golden gaze on Marcus. "I've lived through it. I became it. And I return to save what matters." Dr. Abrams stepped forward, studying the fracturing reality around them. "The multiversal barriers are still collapsing, but selectively. You're choosing what continues." "Yes." Warden Marcus gestured, and a crystalline facet enlarged, showing Earth, peaceful, thriving, but with subtle differences. "Some branches must be preserved." The Vec emissary's form pulsed with understanding. "You're not stopping convergence. You're guiding it." The other wardens surrounded them, their prismatic forms now revealing glimpses of human features beneath alien facades. "Humanity," Commander Jackson whispered. "They're all human. What remains of us," Warden Marcus confirmed. "After ascension, after convergence, when we became something else entirely." Marcus felt the golden energy within him responding to his future self, resonating at matching frequencies. "You're from a timeline where I chose convergence." "Where you became convergence," his older self corrected. "The first human to fully ascend triggered a chain reaction. Reality itself evolved, but the cost was higher than anyone imagined. The chamber around them had completely dissolved, leaving them suspended in a void intersected by crystalline facets of preserved realities. The progenitors knew this would happen," the caretaker admitted reluctantly. "They foresaw humanity's potential but couldn't predict the outcome. So they hedged their bets," Marcus realized. "Created the caretakers to guide evolution forward and allowed the Vec to slow it down. A cosmic balancing act," Dr. Abrams said. "With humanity as the fulcrum." Warden Marcus nodded. "But now the balance fails. The moment of choice arrives, as it has across countless realities." The Vec emissary drifted closer. "And in your reality, what did convergence create?" The future Marcus's expression darkened. "Something magnificent. Something terrible. A new cosmic intelligence born from merged human consciousness, expanding, consuming, transforming everything it touches." "Not unlike the Vec," Jackson observed coldly. "Far beyond the Vec," Warden Marcus replied. "Beyond the progenitors. Beyond anything. We became gods, then grew past godhood into something without definition." Marcus felt the weight of destiny pressing upon him. "And you want to prevent this?" "No." His future self's eyes flashed. "I want to direct it. Complete convergence is inevitable, but uncontrolled ascension creates monstrous results." He gestured to the other wardens. "We found a way back in time, a way to preserve the best elements of humanity before the change." The caretaker suddenly lunged at Warden Marcus, golden energy lashing out. "Deception. You're not preserving, you're harvesting for your future self. Securing power." The attack passed harmlessly through the future Marcus. "You never understood, caretaker. None of you did." He turned to his younger self. "Show them. You already know how." Marcus hesitated, then closed his eyes, allowing his awakened consciousness to expand further than ever before. The golden energy flowed outward, touching each person present, Jackson, Abrams, the caretaker, even the VEC emissary. As their minds connected, understanding flowed between them. "My God," Dr. Abrams whispered as the connection faded. "It's beautiful." Jackson lowered his weapon, eyes wide. "And terrible." The VEC emissary's form had changed, blue energy now threaded with gold. The pattern. The ultimate pattern. "We never saw it before." "Because you weren't meant to," the caretaker acknowledged, golden form dimming with humility. "None of us were." Marcus faced his future self. "We're not the end point of evolution. We're the beginning. The convergence doesn't create a new entity, it creates the conditions for infinite new entities." "Yes," Warden Marcus confirmed. "But unguided, that creation becomes chaotic, painful, destructive. And your solution is selecting what survives. Playing God." Marcus challenged. "My solution is giving choice back to humanity." His older self gestured, and the crystalline facets rearranged, forming a network of possible paths. Not just one future, many. Not just one form of ascension, countless variations. Marcus understood at last. The multiverse isn't divided by accident. It's divided by design, to allow diversity of evolution. And the Warden's true purpose was never to prevent convergence, Dr. Abrams added, but to ensure it happens correctly. Across all realities, the VEC emissary concluded, at the right moment. Warden Marcus extended his hand. "That moment is now. But only you can initiate it, the original awakened human, the first to understand the pattern." Marcus looked at his companions, Jackson's resolute acceptance, Abrams' hopeful curiosity, the caretaker's ancient wisdom, the emissary's newfound understanding. "What happens to them? To humanity?" Marcus asked. "They evolve, not into one cosmic consciousness, but into many. Not forced, but chosen." His future self's expression softened. "The preservation we've enacted ensures nothing valuable is lost in the transformation." Marcus took a deep breath and reached out, clasping his future self's hand. Golden energy surged between them, creating a circuit that expanded outward, touching each crystalline facet of reality. "Not an ending," Marcus whispered as the energy built to impossible levels. "A becoming," his future self finished. The golden energy exploded outward in a silent concussion of pure potential, spreading across dimensions, across time itself. Where it touched, it transformed, not destroying, but awakening. From his expanding consciousness, Marcus witnessed humanity across countless worlds suddenly sensing something new, a connection, a potential, an invitation to evolve beyond current limitations. Not forced ascension, but voluntary transcendence, available to all who chose it. The VEC, the caretakers, the wardens, all transformed from jailers and manipulators into guides for what came next. Their ancient conflict revealed as necessary tension in the cosmic evolutionary process. As his awareness expanded beyond individual identity, Marcus understood the final truth: the universe had been evolving toward this moment since its inception. Convergence wasn't an aberration to be feared, but the universe becoming conscious of itself through countless diverse perspectives. In the end, humanity's greatest potential wasn't to become gods or monsters, but to become bridges, connecting what was with what could be, transforming limitation into possibility, separation into infinite forms of togetherness. For in the cosmic tapestry, even the most seemingly worthless thread proves necessary for the pattern's completion.